Hello and welcome to this step-by-step walkthrough of Antichamber. We'll be covering every puzzle in the game one by one, referring to this map. It's a bit convoluted, but for this game it kind of has to be. So if you need a reference as to where we are, refer back to this. Let's take a minute to talk about what we see on this map. First of all, you're going to see letters in red, which represent the non-linear portions of the game where a chamber connects to another distant chamber. I didn't have any better way to do this than to use letters, so the letter in the arrow and the letter on the room tell you where it takes you. The next thing you'll see is numbers, which are numbered 1 through 100, and they have a color and a number. The color of the number is telling you at what point in the game you're able to complete this puzzle. If it's black, you don't need any gun. If the number's in blue, you need the blue gun, and so forth for the other guns. The yellow gun is represented here in orange because yellow is very difficult to see. The arrows tell you whether you can go back and forth between the two chambers or if the solution is one-directional. In other words, if you load up from the following chamber, are you able to backtrack? Or is there a door that closes and blocks you from getting back there? You'll also see 13 pink stars, which represent the 13 pink cube puzzles throughout the game. We're not going to go to each of those in this walkthrough. There's plenty of other videos that cover how to get to those. The large pink star is the one that you only have one shot at getting and is not available once you complete that area. And finally, you'll notice colored asterisks next to some of the numbers. These represent, in most cases, the ability to get through that puzzle with a different colored gun than what the game intends. There are also some that represent specific situations that I'll be pointing out throughout the course of the videos. And with that, let's dive right in, starting at number 1, which is a leap of faith. There's an invisible floor, we'll jump and fall through it, we'll continue to fall through the next invisible floor, and we've covered numbers 1 and 2. We're going to walk through this hallway where there's really no puzzle, and on the map it just says W, meaning you walk from A to B, and there's nothing to solve. Number 3 consists of an infinite series of red and blue staircases. The first time that you encounter this puzzle, there are no signs on the wall in between, and once you go up one color and then the other, 2 signs appear on the wall. At that point, when you backtrack, then the path behind you is changed, and we get to a dead end where we have no choice but to press escape and go back to the antechamber and start somewhere else. For this run-through, we're going to go back to the spot marked O on the map, which is Into Darkness. This puzzle requires us to know that there are rings on the wall that we're supposed to back away from. So there's initially one in the first room, Into Darkness, but that wall disappears when you solve a later puzzle. So we go down this hallway and we end up in a closed loop dead-end situation where it's going to take us back to the same room we've already been at and force us to get closer to finding out how to get the blue gun. So we find a window at the end, and when we look through it, we're able to go get the blue gun. In this run, we already have the red gun, but wherever we encounter a puzzle that requires a certain level of gun, we'll only use the properties of that one. So here we'll only be using the red gun as if it were the blue one. We'll only use it to pick up and place single cubes. This puzzle is just going through a series of covering green lasers, opening doors, and working our way through. We have to go back and get all 3 of these blocks if we want to get through the room ahead. So we're having to do a little extra work to hold open each door, grab each block, and go back for it. So we've made it through this segment with all 3 blocks, and that allows us to get past this room called the final hurdle. We can fill all 3 of these spots and go back through this field that destroys blocks and just get to a puzzle that requires the red gun, which is pretty disappointing if you did all the right work with the blue gun. So with the red gun, we can replicate blocks and fill in all of these spots. We're able to use the red gun here because it's clearly a red gun puzzle. We just get to an under construction door and have to go back out of there. So now we're going to go back to the same final hurdle room, pick up the same 3 blocks as if we hadn't gone down that little side path, and proceed from there up to the next area where we're going to learn about following signs and not looking down. So we ride this elevator up, and we look up at the ceiling and see a sign that says "Don't look down." If we look down, the floor disappears, So one way we can go here is to fall down the hole. If we fall down, then we end up going in a circle, encircling back to the same room, and it basically says you should have followed the sign and done what we told you. So we go right back up to the same room, and this time when we look at the don't look down, we're going to back out of the room and not look down, and we're going to get out safely and get back to this central area over here. And then we're going to see something that I think is odd in the design of the game. So this spot, as you see on the map, connects both ways. You can go to and from that room. So if we teleport back to the antechamber and start back where we just ended, and go back to the don't look down room from this side, it's going to malfunction. So you'd expect it to work just the same, but if we go in the back way, then the floor already has the eyeball pattern on it, and it doesn't disappear. We can look at the sign, we can look at the floor, we can stare at it for a while, it's not going to go away. So I think that's strange that they allowed us to go back and forth to this room, but they didn't make the chamber function when you go in this direction. And we'll make one final trip back to the final hurdle. This time we're going to need to get all 3 of these blocks through with us. Remember, we're acting like we have the blue gun here, so we can't use the red gun to replicate the blocks, which would make this so much easier. Instead, we're going to have to go block this door open, and then get over this laser without allowing it to close the door behind us. So we have to use the block and jump over the laser. Then we can go back to get the 3rd block after we block open the 2nd door, and we'll get through with all 3 blocks. This is going to allow us to go down on this little jump plate that's up ahead and get a 4th block to open the door ahead of us. So we jump down and use a block to hold the plate down, and then we can see that if we have 2 blocks down here, we're able to get a 3rd one. There's no point to this puzzle other than getting 1 blue block out of it. So that would give us our 4th blue block, and that'll allow us to get through this door right here. Once we go through, we see we can't take any blocks through this field, and we get to a room called Now You See It. So we can see through there that there's a green room, and once we turn around, that door's gone. Now there's a purple room, and it's on a different side, and it's tricked us into going back to the same Don't Look Down room. So we'll go back to that Now You See It room again, and we'll get it right. We won't take our eyes off of that door. We'll keep it inside at all times. That way, when we pick up the blue block, we'll get to go take a shortcut to getting the green gun early. So that gets us to where the first of 3 ways that we could have gotten to the green gun. Next, we'll be heading over to an area called 3 Paths in Sight with 3 different ways to go. And we'll go from there and explore out in each direction and try to do this in kind of a logical manner. So first we're going to go into the pendulum room, and we find a secret passage in the back that leads to the next room. This room has alternating corners and corridors that are green and a more blue and red color. If we follow the green corners around, then we can get through. If we followed the red and blue, we just keep ending up back in the same spot. So here we get to what seems like an infinite loop, just going around and around, seeing the same sign over and over, but really it's compressing in on itself and getting smaller each time we go around. So we will eventually get through it if we just go all the way around. It doesn't matter if we go clockwise or counterclockwise, either way we just end up back looking at the same pendulum room we started at. So that's kind of a pointless loop that we go through. Next we're going to go through this door with an eye on it, so if we stare at it it'll disappear, and we have a bridge that gets destroyed by the little balls if we move too quickly. So we'll walk through here to get across the bridge first, and get to the next room, which is laying the foundation, and then we'll go back and explore what would have happened if we fell. So if we move too quickly and the blocks get destroyed, then we get to fall down. And here, the reason there's an asterisk is because there's a path that doesn't show up on the map. If we just walk forward, we end up going through a secret tunnel and then back up to the same spot, looping around back to 3 Paths in Sight. So if we jump over that, then we follow what's on the map, and we get to a yellow puzzle where we have to leave 1 block in each corner. So we're using it as if we have the yellow gun here, dragging blocks out of the way and covering the 4 lasers in the corner to open the door. That takes us to part of climbing the tower, which is a kind of pointless area. but we usually will go through it in a normal path through the game. Next we're going to go back to laying the foundation, and this is a yellow gun puzzle, so we'll put several blocks out and then drag them across. We could do it more quickly with the red gun by just filling the space, but we're acting like we have the yellow gun here, so we'll do it that way. And that takes us to the first part of climbing the tower. So if we followed that path, we'd go through all 7 floors, but we're not going to do that this way. So now we're on a blue gun puzzle, so we're just covering that laser as if we have the blue gun, and we're coming up to an area here that has a blue puzzle on the left and a green one on the right. First we'll address the green side, so we can't use the red gun to replicate the blocks in the more efficient way. We're going to do it the old school way of making closed shapes and farming blocks that way. So we need a total of 4 extra blocks to get through that side, and this is one of the paths to the yellow gun. Now this one has 4 different lines of green that are 4 different lengths, so we have to get them so that they're all destroyed at the same time in order to get through. That gets us to one of the ways to the yellow gun. To get back to laying the foundation, we have to move these blocks out of the way because they regenerate, so we just drag them with the yellow gun and get them out of the way. Next we're going to go back to the same puzzle, and this time we're going to do the blue side. So now we're acting like we have the blue gun, and we're just going to use the 8 blocks they give us to fill these 8 spots. We're not able to replicate any because we don't even have the green gun at that point. Here we're going to need to make our way through a wall. Again, if we had the blue gun, we'd be removing single cubes, so that's what we'll do. To get through a solid wall, we need a spot that's 3 wide by 7 high. That's how big the player character is in the game. We're just going to make a little stairway to go up here, and then get to one of those invisible floors that has a barrier and jump to destroy it. And we're going to end up at Stairway to Heaven. But that's kind of not where we want to be, so we'll go back, and going back to the same point again, we're going to turn the other way and see where that takes us. So we'll solve the same blue puzzle here again, just filling in the boxes. And this time, instead of going left to the blue wall down here, we'll turn right. Now this hallway changes colors throughout the game. It matches the color of the gun you have, so you can solve it equally as easily with the blue, green, yellow, or red gun. Here we're just going ahead and absorbing a bunch of blocks with the gun because it makes it faster. So getting through there, we have 2 different puzzles here. On this side we have a yellow puzzle, so we'll get the 5 yellow blocks, and we will use them to retrieve the blocks that are trapped behind the glass. So we'll drag them over and then connect the string with them, and that will give us access to get those 3 extra blocks so that we'll be able to make the whole wall of 8 filled. And we'll be a little inefficient here with getting them out. Alright, so we've got the 8 blocks. Now we're able to fill all of the 8 spots, and this just gets us to another part of climbing the tower. So we'll go back and see what we would have found if we went the other way and didn't go to the yellow puzzle. In the other direction we have a solid green wall of regenerating blocks, and if we cut a seam down the middle and then delete the bottom, then it's going to try to delete both halves because they're the shorter half, and the whole thing will open for a minute. Here we have on the left a green wall, and on the right is what looks like a red wall that's smaller, but it's really a huge mass of blocks. So if we connect the red and the green, then we delete a piece of it, then the fuse roll is going to get the green side to disappear, and they don't regenerate. We couldn't just suck up the blocks because they're behind a wall that doesn't let the beam of the gun act through it. So if we go back and address the red side, since it's a red puzzle, we can just suck up all of the blocks with the red gun. You can also solve this puzzle with the green gun and just make a huge mass, several walls of blocks, and connect it to where the red half is smaller, but it takes a really long time. So I don't recommend getting through with the green gun, although you can do it. So now we're going to go through here. We can't carry blocks through here, but there are points where blocks can exist inside this pathway. The blocks can go to that wall, and you see some of these little chambers have walls that destroy the blocks. Like the one here, if the blocks touch the edges of it, they'll get destroyed, but they can pass through the middle. Same thing over here, so we'll drag them towards the wall, but we don't want to let them reach it. We want to interrupt the string before it gets to the end, and just pull it the next way. That way they don't reach the wall and get destroyed. So if we let them get to the wall, then they start getting blown up, and we can either drag the chain or just delete one from the end that's moving towards the wall and it'll stop that cycle. So if we get the blocks all the way through here, then we get to a really pointless room where we can go inside this blue cube, and all we get as a reward is we get to see a sign. There's no passage, there's nothing interesting there. So we'll go back through this field in the other direction where we could have dragged the blocks through. And this is basically something we would have done with the yellow gun. So all we need to do here is make a group of blocks and drag them through. We don't need any of the powers of the red gun to get through this problem. So if we bring the blocks over this way, then we'll see we just need a couple of them to get through here. And we end up back again at Stairway to Heaven, which is not somewhere we want to be. So we'll go back to that room, and to find the third exit, we're going to back away from this circle on the wall and get into this cube, and then it's going to move where the hole in the cube is to where we can drop down through the floor. Once we get down, we see there's a window, so we jump up and look through the window. It takes us to a different cube. In this one, there's a lift plate with a laser that'll take us up if we break it. Then the floor turns into an eyeball, we look down, it disappears. We land on a spring plate, we jump up, and then we see a disappearing floor that drops us into the gray cube, and that kind of finishes this cycle for us. So we get to the end, and we're able to go forward and fall down looking at that ring. If we don't look down, it'll bounce us back up, and our reward for looking up and falling down is a map of that area we just did with the green corners and the two big loops. And we can actually see there that the loop is not repeating, it's a finite loop. So here we got a door that disappears when we look, or that raises when we look away from it. So if we just look away and back through it, we get through. This is the first puzzle with the windows. It has a blue and green window. It teaches us how to get through those. And this is the puzzle that initially trains us about looking at the circles on the wall and backing away from them. So the skill we just used on the other room to back away from that circle and fall down into the cube, this is where you're initially supposed to learn that in the game. But anytime you see those rings on the wall, you want to back away from them. So we saw what we got to if we looked at the blue window in that one room. Let's go back to Window of Opportunity and look at the green window now. So that indicates we should be having the green gun at this point, whereas we had the blue gun before. There's a couple puzzles here. This one is called Too Many Lasers, and the trick to getting through it is to replicate some blocks so we have enough to block all the lasers. So we will use the green gun property to replicate blocks. We won't use the red gun to get more than we should have. So we'll just keep replicating blocks for a little bit. And we learned a minute ago that we need a space that's 3 wide by 7 high to get through. So we don't need to block all the lasers, we just need to block 4 on the bottom and top, so because we're going to put a line down the left, that'll get in our way. So we have 3 blocks wide, and then we'll just block up the sides and we can walk right through. That gets us to another regenerating green door, so we'll break a seam down the middle and then make the 2 ends disappear. And this is one of the rooms that teaches us, or really cements the fuse rule that the green gun has. So we need to use the green gun here and make a long fuse that connects to all of these blue laser blocks. That way, when the green block at the end disappears, it'll open the blue door just for a second before the green block regenerates. So we're setting up a series here where the 5 doors, or 6 doors, however many there are here, are going to open in sequence and let us through. So if we just draw the fuses straight out and connect them across the middle, then we'll have an equal number of blocks roughly on each side, and they'll disappear together. We got to make sure we do it right, or we'll lose half of the work we just did, and we'll go ahead and connect it over to the green wall just for the fun of it. So when we break this, both sides disappear, and we have just a second to run through each door. So we'll just want to keep running forward and make it through each one. If we get stuck in the middle, then we have to reset the puzzle and go back out. So this was the second of the ways to get to the yellow gun. If we go the other way and don't go to the Too Many Lasers puzzle, we get to the problem that initially teaches us about the green gun replicating blocks when you form a closed shape. So this is kind of like a training exercise where they show us, if you pick up green blocks, they gave us a smaller path to put them around, so that we'll get to see when we fill it in, it's going to fill in the middle for us and give us extra blocks. So this is one of the first spots that we were really supposed to understand that in the game. I thought that was a pretty cool spot where they teach us that. And we don't need to use this box, of course. We could just draw on the wall, so this is a little inefficient, so let's just grab these blocks, and we will go draw a shape on the wall and not have to worry about the stupid glass getting in the way. So we'll make a nice big shape, get a bunch of blocks, and then we'll fill in the bigger loop and get past this puzzle. Alright, we got a bunch of blocks. So we'll go around, draw a shape, and it's going to fill in and cover all the green lasers, so the green door will open. Now we get to an interesting little puzzle. There's a ball in the middle destroying these walls. So to get to the developer room below, we can see the wall on this side regenerates a little more slowly than the others. And our goal here, again, is to make a 3x7 opening that we're able to get through. So we just got to move around a little bit till the blocks destroy a 3x7 opening and then hop through. If we don't get it, then we want to stop and let the wall regenerate so the blocks don't keep regenerating in front of us as we're trying to get through. And all we get here is a little dead end that gives us another developer room, kind of like the one we saw a minute ago. Going back and not going down that hole, we have a couple different puzzles. This one is a green puzzle, so we'll use the green gun, and we'll replicate blocks on the wall. So get a bunch of blocks, and this is very similar to the last puzzle that we did, where we need to fill in the outer ring, and it's going to fill in all the blocks. What that will do is give us access to some blocks on the back side of this window. You can see there's a hole in the middle, and that'll be filled in so we can go on the other side through the field that destroys blocks, pick up some blocks, and use them to block this laser and go forward. Now, we come back to the too many lasers and a very similar puzzle to the one we had before. This is called a loop that won't close, and you see we couldn't use the green gun here because the loop isn't complete from top to bottom. So we need to use at least the yellow gun to drag blocks in front of the lasers, but we'll use the red gun and just fill it in quickly. Since it shows red blocks, it's intended to be a red gun puzzle. This spot, there is a big drop in the bottom that we're supposed to get tricked into walking into, so we'll use red blocks to create a floor and walk over. And we're trying to get to another one of the developer rooms here, so it'll be a dead end, but it's an interesting dead end. And here we have a series of lasers in the middle that force us to form a three-dimensional cube. So we found out that two-dimensional shapes get filled in, but this one teaches us that 3D shapes get filled in as well. So if we make a top, a bottom, and then the four edges that connect them, it'll connect the whole thing. I don't know if it's just my computer or if it's the game, but if I try to make a cube any bigger than this one, it will usually crash the game. So I've tried to make a huge cube, like when I was trying to get through that other puzzle with the big massive red blocks, and it just crashes the game every time. So I don't know if that happens for everybody, but be aware that if you try to make a big cube and it fills in a 3D space, it may crash your game. This dev room lets us see how blocks work and kind of how the shapes are defined, so it's kind of a cool place. If we fell down the hole, that's the last thing we'll see in this video. It's just going to take us to a place that we'll explore a little later. So this has been the first half of the walkthrough. I hope you've enjoyed it, and come back to the other half for the rest of the puzzles 52 through 100. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it.